The context is changing by putting something there. Landscape architecture was a weak profession.
Did you study it a little bit more?
The professor was still a big professor. How do you reach the design? Where's the best way of the entrance?
First time we had someone have an actual diagram to show their design process. I love that.
Shut up and just listen. All the architects are egos.
Today we are introducing Studio Polymorph, a landscape architecture firm based in Berlin that's reshaping the way we think about outdoor spaces. Founded by Stefan Bernard, a landscape architect with a rich educational background, and Agata, Waszcuk, a previous company employee that proved her outstanding skills and leadership qualities, the 2022 founded studio has gained recognition for its unique approach to design, known as Dialogical design. In our visit, we were warmly welcomed by the team, who invited us to lunch, making us feel right at home.
This method emphasizes collaboration, open communication, and creating context-sensitive solutions that enhance the relationship between people and their environment.
After our introduction, we sat down with Stefan Bernard himself to delve into what it truly means to be a landscape architect.
This interview offers an inside look into the creative process and the philosophy that drives one of Berlin's most innovative studios.
So the first question will be, what does landscape architecture mean to you? What are its core principles?
Well, landscape architecture for me is first of all passion. I've been doing this for quite a while now. As you might have seen, I started with architecture in Italy, and I realized that architecture was not the thing for me. Maybe I explain that later on. And I realized that I'm very much interested in this subject, which in Italy is sort of not existing, but it was in Germany. So I switched to Austria then to study that. And then I eventually came to Berlin. That's why I love your thing as a student, because when I was young, there was no landscape architecture, but I felt it was essential, really important to have, but nobody really cared about that. We had the strong architect brought up with a big ego, with the thing, I can do anything. And I felt that in landscape architecture there was something that was close to my person. So I did a lot of things like you did. So we did exhibitions and we tried to understand the Dutch landscape architect. So because landscape architect was not something, like we're talking about late 90s, beginning of the 90s, which was not very present. Italy was not at all. In Austria was starting to be, but still quite in the context of natural sciences. So what I studied was landscape ecology, because landscape planning at that time was not existing. Landscape design was forbidden, because you were not allowed to design at that stage, because it was bad for everybody. But I still feel this passion, and I had this passion to understand what's the essential of this landscape architecture. So this is what landscape architecture for me. It is a profession I love to do and to experience.
Thank you, yeah. And you talked, I think it's very important that you brought up this big ego aspect of a lot of architects, and I think that leads perfectly into what we want to ask you. Why is landscape architecture as important to the world? Why would you say it's as important as architecture or other disciplines?
For me, as a landscape architect, I always felt, so why did I change from architect to landscape architect? It was because I felt, let's not talk about ego, but the way in Italy at least, there was a big effort in the education in seeing the big God. So we studied that, and the professor was still a big professor, and everybody tried to follow. From my point of view, the focus was on the object. My colleagues and me, we tried to design beautiful architecture and shapes and all the things. But I felt that this was not thought within the context, which is not true in a whole way. And I felt that I was very much interested in the context. I love to study ecology in the first place, because ecology is nothing else than understanding that everything you take out or you put into an environment is affecting the environment. It does something with that. My idea was to, and by learning ecology, in that case as a subject of science, you understand the context is changing by putting something there. This is a little bit how I work, how we work in the studio. So we have a big view on the context before we talk about formal things, right? What I'm trying to say is, I think the landscape architecture view is a contextual view, it's a site-specific view. This is what I'm interested in. But you have also architects who work like this, so we don't need to say all the architects are egos. But what is true, I think, that the architect is still brought up as somebody who should have a strong idea. He should to fight for this idea. When you fight for an idea, you don't listen anymore to what could be an input from outside. Some of these architects, if they're really good, it's beautiful because they have this passion and they know what they do and they produce fantastic things. I'm more interested in the context. That's a bit why landscape art is good for me.
What steps did you do to make this switch from architecture to landscape architecture? Did you study it a little bit more, or did you just delve deeply into the topic just on experience itself?
After I did my diploma in Italy when I was 18 years old, I felt like I wanted to stay in Italy for a while. I come from the ecological 80s, so that was pretty important for me. And I felt like I wanted to do something, not just to talk about the things. No. And I felt, wow, architecture sounds good to me because the subject landscape architecture was not existing in Italy at that time. It is still quite weak in Italy. So I tried to do that and experiencing the thing that I tried to tell you, seeing a lot of people, and also I didn't like the way of education. What I experienced in Germany when I had to step to Vienna and studied landscape ecology, came to Berlin. And here the education was much more to make the single person stronger in that what he or she is thinking. So that's what I experienced. So I pretty much like that, the idea. I'm good in if somebody gives me a little bit of space to experience myself and to try to get better, but get better as me. But I realized then, I went to Vienna, studied landscape ecology, but as I tried to tell you, at that time design was not an issue there. There was nobody who could teach landscape architectural design because it was not existing. There was nobody. You need people experienced in design to teach design. Somebody might see it in a different way, but which is fine. As nobody was a designer, we looked at the guys from the Netherlands. Can you just give me the orange book? Because this was totally new. It was absolutely unbelievable. How can you? By seeing that, I realized in Vienna, there is nobody who can tell me how to do this. That's the reason why I came to Berlin, because in Berlin, there was Hans Leudl. And he was the guy who was actually teaching landscape architectural design. And that's why me and Hans, at the end, did this book, which tries to figure out what is design as landscape architecture, because I think landscape and design as landscape architecture is another way of doing things.
Wow.
Did I answer your question?
I think you did, yeah.
Yes, you did.
Very thoroughly.
Yes.
That's super interesting.
And I think
where does a landscape architecture project actually begin? Like, what are the steps you go through to create landscape architecture?
Well, it depends, obviously. Last year I finished my PhD at the TU Berlin. My issue was to try to find out a strategic model to do design as landscape architecture. As this was in Germany say, entwurfsbasierte Promotion, so designerly based PhD, I came with the idea to have like such a model. That's the model that we use here in the studio. And I realized also that designing architects who call themselves designer, they don't like models because they are good designers. They don't want to think about how they get from one point to the other. And I'm a little bit an abstract person, so I like to see the thing in a sort of another way, or to have the distance to the thing. I try to make clear how this studio works, to make this understand. This was my starting point, and at the end it was this model. And this is what I describe precisely, hopefully, and it's called like Entwerfen zwischen Autonomie und Vermittlung. If you're somebody who is interested in other people or in sites, but on the other hand, you feel like that there is an autonomy in designing, there should be, I think. We try to balance that. With this sort of model, we start from a step which is called Beobachtung, which is observation, and then try to go between what we call a theme or a stance to the actual design. Then we actually have this step of Vermittlung, so this is communication, but in that case we communicate our concept very, very long. We have like 120 slides where we explain, okay, you told us you want a park. So what we did, we looked at this, we looked, there's a river next to it, we are in Munich, all these things. And then we do some question, should it be a park or should it be a square, should it be hard? And from that theme, from that stance, we get this or this or this design. And then we tell them, we explain them very, very clearly what we did in this whole story. And then we shut up and just listen. Not trying to defend, as I told you before, you're not able to listen if you're trying to defend yourself. And we don't want to discuss that. We told them everything, and then we have the distance. And then it goes back to the observation, and then okay, they told us this and that. That's interesting because we could use that for that and that. And usually we get to agreed design within 3 those steps. that's a bit the way we do it. But you've got beautiful design. This is just helping, and just one last word why I did this. I started to teach at university, and I felt I need to tell them how to work.
I think this is the first time we had like someone have an actual diagram to show their design process. I love that.
Landscape architecture is a discipline which has a lot of in common with other disciplines. And can you tell us a little bit more about cooperation with other architects or landscape architects, or about the cooperation between disciplines?
What I try to do in my professional life is to emphasize the singularity of landscape architecture and landscape architecture as a design. I do know there is always this thing of collaboration. I was always more interested, because landscape architecture was a weak profession, first of all to understand our ability. So what's the special thing from my point of view? If you start to collaborate too early, you lose your own special thing, right? And I was brought up, and I don't have to hide myself. And I'm not prepared to do that, not anymore. Now we have a role in this game. Then it's a designing process, which is always a process between a client and the designer and the technical servant and the municipality and all and the wheelchair guys. And yeah, you're laughing, but this is craftsmanship. Then obviously you have a studio and you have your team. There's a lot of communication. Everybody has ideas and not ideas. The collaboration with architects is different. Different in that way that we have colleagues who really appreciate our work and our way of working, especially when we do like urban design projects, obviously. The architect looks or tries to have approach from his or her way of doing it, and we always come from the outside, from the side, from the context, from how do you reach the side, where's the best way of the entrance, and you have architects who love that. They appreciate this other way of seeing that, and I think all these projects become better. And then you have the architects who don't like anybody else beside them, right? So then he's not or she is not interested in that, but we don't work with them anymore. We kicked them out because my team is so disappointed then, because I do know we do a really good job. Then you come to the studio of this kind of architect and they say, no, we don't know, we're not interested in that, and we do it like this. And then there is obviously not a lot of fun. But on the other hand, we have a lot of architects, well, maybe 70% of our projects are with architects, and it works fantastically. Always a little bit a matter of how do you feel yourself welcomed.
Can you tell a little bit more about your last project or your favorite project, and tell us what challenges did you face there and what kind of problems did you face there?
I think I choose these projects because they are very important for the development also of this Handlungsmodell. As you might see, all these projects in a formal way very different. You've got squares, you have sort of gardens, this is a monastery. This project was a project that, for example, it was supposed to be temporary. Now it's 18 years old, it's still there. It's funny, isn't it? But it was quite important because this actually was the last project that I, in a classical designer way, did myself as a boss. And then I said, yes, now collaborators do this. The next maybe very important project is the Spittelmarkt, because in that time I started to understand that there should be a sort of a feedback loop in our way of working. So it was a really good experience with the old people that were living there. It was really good. As we were interested in what they were saying, but we were still thinking, well, yeah, we are the designers. And they didn't want to design. They just had the feeling that their needs should be heard. They wanted the feeling that we heard their needs and we somehow integrated it in the planning. This is quite important, I think. Maybe this is also a very important project close to Eberbach because it's big, it's about 7 hectares. We were working 20 years on that. So we won the competition in 2004 and last year it was finished.
Really?
Mm-hmm. When you are a proprietor of a firm, you stay with a project for a long time, and when it's finished, it's not finished at all. If somebody breaks down, so they're gonna call you.
I was wondering how you guys feel when people don't take adequate care of your work.
For landscape architect, you need to be really, really tough. It makes you sad, obviously, because there's no respect to that. I love public space. I love it that, especially in Berlin, there are few rules in the public space. If you go to London, where you have these centers where nobody can go, where there is policemen controlling everything, you're not allowed to sit there, you're not allowed to drink here. I have such a affection to open space, to all these strange people, and I just like it. So you have to accept that some things maybe not in the way you see it, and not all the things are like beautiful, like the guy, oh, I will do a bench there, and he sit there and read in the newspaper, wow. But yeah, I think we need to accept that. We try to monitor our projects also after a while, and obviously they change a lot. Also the trees, they grow. Obviously, it doesn't stay there. This is maybe a very, very interesting difference to architecture. When you finish, you're finished. And then you try to take the photographs before mommy is gonna take her curtains, hang their curtains. So fast, take the picture and then go away. And then you, which is fine.
I'm laughing because it's true.
It is. It is.
If you want to find out more about Stefan and his studio Polymorph, you can check out the links in our description and check out their work and hopefully become interested in landscape architecture like we have. Okay.
So, see you later.
Night.
See you in the next interview video. Thanks a lot.